sweetheart. Be reasonable. After all, we're married.
But I'm leaving you. Woman, I've got to put you down.
Consider that a divorce.
Well, if you can't treat me right, ain't no use of me hanging around.
Marriage is not a covenant. Marriage is a contract. Before the Second Vatican Council, Catholics always called marriage a contract and virtually never called it a covenant. For instance, if you check out papalencyclicals.net and use the search term marriage contract, you'll see the term was used by ecumenical councils, Pope Pius IX, Pope Pius XI, and others. If you use the search term marriage covenant, you'll see that the term was never used. People who call marriage a covenant are borrowing it from Protestant theology. Protestants have been calling marriage a covenant since at least the 1700s. So on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, I thought I'd have a little fun with this, and I posted the Ascent of Mount Carmel $25 challenge, and I was alluding to John Farrell's $25,000 challenge. Here's the video that I posted as a YouTube short. Calling marriage a covenant is a Novus Ordo novelty. The Church always called marriage a contract. But unfortunately, many Catholics, including traditional Catholics, have fallen for this Novus Ordo babblespeak. So I'm introducing the Ascent of Mount Carmel $25 challenge to the first person who can show that the pre-conciliar Church ever used the term marriage covenant. To my surprise, one person found a single usage of the term marriage covenant.
Nicholas I, the Patriarch of Constantinople, wrote a description of the ceremony of marriage in a series of questions posed by the Bulgarians. He wrote, "Soon after or at an appropriate time both are led to the nuptial covenant. They first take their place in the Church of God, bearing their oblations which they are to offer through the hands of the priest. Finally, they receive the blessing and the veil. After these ceremonies, they leave the church wearing on their head crowns which by custom are always kept in the church itself."
It's difficult to express just how impressed I was with Brittany's research skills. This document was available on the internet only in Latin.
It took about an hour. I basically read the entirety of the book, On Christian Marriage, by Father Paul F. Palmer, looking for at least one reputable source of when the Church used the term marriage covenant, before the Second Vatican Council. I found the quote from Nicholas I, which allowed me to fact-check it with the original letter. It was a great challenge, and definitely a learning experience. I had no idea the term was so absent in papal encyclicals, ecumenical council documents, and the Church Fathers, until the Second Vatican Council.
So I'll be cutting a check for $25 and we'll be sending it to Brittany. But I'm going to keep this challenge open to anyone else who can find a second example of the Church using the term marriage covenant. I should note that it's interesting that Nicholas I, the Patriarch of Constantinople, is apparently the only pre-Vatican II figure who used the term marriage covenant, because he was the character who introduced the novelty of allowing up to 3 divorces in the Eastern Church. And this is significant because using the concept of a marriage covenant instead of a contract is nowadays used as cover for allowing divorces and annulments in the Catholic Church. Let me explain. Scott Hahn talks about covenants quite extensively and makes it clear that the words covenant and contract have separate meanings. However, if you look at the Code of Canon Law of 1983, you'll just see how schizophrenic the Novus Ordo Church is because they use the terms interchangeably.
And now Catholics take it, yeah, that's a covenant. As far as I can tell, Scott Hahn was the one who brought it over.
Scott Hahn's, he's part of the problem. Go ahead, sorry.
If you go through all the old documents, church always called it a contract. Now, Scott Hahn tries to
Here's
tie
why.
it into other
Yes,
things.
yes. Covenant is code, is special language for there are no rights, there's only love. And when you enter a covenant, there's no terms to the covenant. There's just a lifetime of love and all that. And you just kind of, that's why they have all this marriage prep. It is a future lifetime of love. That's your covenant. You're jumping off a cliff into a future of love, and you better be able to provide all that. And if you can't, you're not capable of marriage. Okay? So that's what covenant is, another way of saying we don't want to talk about law. We just want to talk about love. And if something's not right, God's the one in charge, not the local ordinary. But a contract has terms, and you cannot consent to a contract unless you can look at what's on the terms and say, yes, I want these things. And I'm going to say, and I'm capable of these things, and I'm going to say yes to these things, sign here. This is gone with the covenant, because you can say, well, it's just a future of love. And this is why the Protestants are all over it too, because they have no church, no governing authority. They got nothing except the Bible and God. That's it. So they can't do marriage law. And once the Protestants had to, they're supposed to fall back on the bishop because they're baptized, but they would fall back on the state. And when the state had fault-based divorce, they could get away with it and call it a contract, because they at least had the state to back up the marriage. But now no fault is no justice. And in fact, you could say not the Catholic Church, but the people in charge running things at the church today are almost in favor of no fault divorce, because they say marriage is not based on justice. Therefore, they don't want any justice in the divorce system. So they're almost pro no fault, because to them, there are no rights. There's just love or no love.
Every time Catholics decide to try to borrow something from the Protestants, it turns out to be a complete disaster. And there are absolutely no exceptions to this. You don't have to look any further for a good example than the Catholic charismatic movement. So when you hear someone prattle on about marriage covenants, please beware. This is not Catholic, and it's just Novus Ordo Babel speak. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back again within a week with another one. But in the meantime, please check out my Facebook page and my Twitter page. Every day I post additional content that you won't find on this YouTube channel. And also, please pray for the church.